Good morning, everyone. If everybody can get their seats, we'll go ahead and get started. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Obviously, I am not Laura. Laura could not be with us today, so I'm going to EMC this morning for us. For those of you who I may not know, my name is Steve Beebe. I'm the superintendent of the Buckeye Union High School District, and I am the president-elect for ASA. So I will get to do this next year. So thank you for being with us, and we're looking forward to having everybody here today. And to start off, I would like to welcome our breakfast sponsors and let them share a little bit with you about them. So Miguel Zuleta and Kristen Torres, come on up.
Hi everyone, good morning. Happy Friday. So glad we made it, guys. My name is Kristen Torres, and this is my colleague,
Miguel Zuleta.
and we're here with Subject AI, subject.com. We're a digital curriculum, and we support grades from 6 to 12. We support them in credit recovery, initial credit, multilingual courses, as well as CTE pathways. We decided to bring the most engaging platform in the market, and we build it in a way that matches where students are learning right now. So our videos are extremely engaging. They're anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. And what we do is we implemented the same rigor and academic integrity along with, but we also wanted to tap into that fun, like TikTok, Instagram, YouTube type of audience that our students are consuming every day. So we wanted to bring that fun back into the classroom and really take them away from what it seems like those compliance HR videos we all have to take at the beginning of the year. Like, I think we need to bring education a little bit more fun and be able to keep our students very engaged. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to my colleague, Miguel, to add in anything I missed out.
No, great job, Kristen. So we work with districts that are looking for more engaging and rigorous curriculum for those students that are taking asynchronous classes, right? We have some information packets at your table. I'll also be sending Paul some information and resources that he'll distribute to you guys. But if you want to get in touch with us and schedule some time to see Subject in action, very easy. My email is miguel@subject.com, and Kristen's email is kristen@subject.com. We're going to stick around for a little bit during the meeting if you want to reach out and get our contact info further. But thank you all for being here, and thank you for everything you guys do.
Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you again. And next up, then we have Aaron Wonders, K-12 Policy Advisor for a Governor's Office update. Aaron.
Hi, good morning, everyone. For those that haven't met me, Aaron Wonders. I serve as Governor Hobbs' K-12 Education Policy Advisor, amongst other duties. For this purposes, K-12 education. Really appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you a little bit today and just provide some updates about where we're at, what's been going on. As we all know, we're past the 100th day of our legislative session. Unfortunately, we have not finished it, and we've seen a record number of good ideas put into bill form this year. Whether they're good or not is up for debate. But where we're at the moment, the governor's taken action, I think, on around 14 education bills that have come to her desk. About half of those were signed, half of those were vetoed. I know some of those vetoed ones were of significant concern for superintendents and for ASA. A couple notable ones in there were posting superintendent contracts through ADE in House Bill 2075. Senate Bill 1142, which would have forced the state to opt into the federal STO-like program, tax credit program. And then House Bill 4033, which was also some limitations on bonding, which is similar to some other bills that are out there this session. So appreciate all the advocacy work that each of you do and that Rebecca and Paul do for the organization. These bills have been very challenging this session, but your voice down there informing legislators about the impact that these pieces of legislation have on your ability to serve students is really critical, especially in this time. One thing I do also want to talk a little bit about is where we're at budget-wise. For those that haven't been following, the governor released her budget at the beginning of session. One core component of that executive budget was a renewal of Proposition 123. I'm sure you've seen in the media that's been up for some significant debate this session. The way that the governor had structured her priority for Prop 123 was a renewal that both invested in school facilities through a $1.5 billion bonding package over 3 years, as well as increased base formula funding by $270 million ongoing. We had been having conversations with our friends down at the legislature about that, and ultimately ended budget negotiations about 6-ish weeks ago after presenting some options for negotiation and being informed that there was no viable pathway for Prop 123. Subsequently, the governor's issued a bill moratorium saying that she'll veto bills coming up to her desk unless we see the Republicans present a public budget. That is still in effect. There have been 3 bills that have been vetoed under that moratorium right now, but as you can imagine, Prop 123 has been a significant issue this legislative session, and we've seen some rather negative comments from our friends down at the legislature about the chances for that being going forward to the ballot this year. Regardless, we're still working towards negotiation. We'll see what they put out publicly for a Republican-only budget. That should be coming at some point soon. I've seen various timelines in the media around what that's going to look like. I think one thing just to be clear about, though, without Prop 123, it's going to be very challenging to find new money for K-12 education. For those that didn't see, the Finance Advisory Committee recently met. We've had to adjust revenue numbers down, primarily based on continued uncertainty at the federal level, things like tariffs, the war in Iran, that are impacting the state's ability to continue economic activity in a growth pattern. And all that being said, even though those numbers came down and it appears that there is a balance, there have been pressures through the passage of H.R. 1 that create significant challenges on the revenue side going forward, particularly in our healthcare spaces. So all that being said, without a 1, 2, 3, it's very challenging to find additional dollars for investment. But that continues to be a priority for the governor. We hope it's a priority for you, and we hope there's continued advocacy as we try to march towards a budget this session. So not to be too doom and gloom, but it's a little challenging right now. In terms of bills that are out there, I think there's somewhere in the ballpark of maybe 50-ish that I'm tracking education-wise. Again, I've continued to appreciate all of the work that you all do, all the work that your team does in that advocacy space. There's a lot more work to do, unfortunately, for the session, but continue to appreciate the ongoing partnership with ASA and superintendents. So that's kind of a brief overview that I just wanted to share. Happy to answer any questions from folks, if there are any. Well, if not, again, thank you all so much for having me here. Hopefully you have some positive updates to share the next time I'm here. But again, appreciate you all so much.
Thank you, Aaron. Okay, next up then for a State Board of Education update, Sean Ross, Executive Director. Oh, Bruce is here. I should look up. I know Bruce is here, not Sean.
Awesome, thank you. Good morning, thanks for having me. Give you a few updates and then highlight upcoming board meetings. It's going to be a pretty light run here this month and next month. I don't want to jinx us, but that's kind of what's happening. Statewide assessments, we're at the RFP phase. The board hopes to get an update in the May meeting, probably an executive session about the process of where the RFP is. So we're still hoping to be on track for a June, hopefully adoption of, or approval of a contract for upcoming assessments. And then, as you know, as we've covered every month for a ton of months, we're in the A through F revision cycle. I'm just highlighting that we had a study session this Monday, 4/20. Good day to have a study session on CCRI. And so if you want to tune into that video is available to see the board's, what was presented to them, the board's questions and such. And that's all linked for you when you get this PowerPoint. Part of that was announced that a survey is going out to the field. So we encourage you to read this as well as pass it on to appropriate staff and public to give input on CCRI indicators and give feedback on that so that the board has that in hand when they're looking at revisions, and as well as the informed tax work as well. The March board meeting, we approved the ESA handbook without the hours-long affair. It just kind of sailed right through, which was great. There was a great student advisory panel on civics literacy. We also adopted A through F capital M methodology, which the board pushed to the tax for them to consider how future cut scores and how A through F will be determined. So it was an easy vote, but we're telling them, the conversations, the critical conversations are coming down the road when you actually go to talk about cut scores and where all this will land. So, and then ADE guidance related to students with disabilities and graduation's been kind of an ongoing theme, but ADE did provide a great presentation as well as pretty useful guidance. It's probably the best guidance that we've seen in this space. They did a really great job. Upcoming board meetings again. Monday is the April board meeting. It's pretty light. No news. Aaron left the building already. No news on filling empty board member seats. We're expecting any time. We've got 3 open seats, and as you all that deal with board's quorum was really interesting for Monday, as we have a couple members out, one teacher that's not going to be there, and it got a little dicey for us as staff, but you know how that goes. On Monday, we'll also get the Isaac and Antelope Union receivership updates. Coming probably in June, it'll be the annual Educator Discipline Report. We'll celebrate Teacher of the Year in May, and then we'll also in May have a school improvement presentation from the department and Michelle Udall. Again, pretty light April meeting. We're expecting the meeting hopefully not go too long. Call of the public currently is pretty low, and then May meeting should be pretty light. I don't want to jinx us, but hopefully that holds. Any questions that I can answer? Yeah.
Back to my normal proficiency. That word is a killer. It's confusing for the community. We spend all of our time trying to explain it to them. Be nice if they choose a different word.
Duly noted.
Please pass the message.
We have and will and continue. Thanks. All right. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. And we'll see you down the road.
All right. Next up on the agenda for an Arizona Department of Education update, we're going to invite Natasha Camp, the Deputy Associate Superintendent, up to give us that update.
Good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to see so many familiar faces this morning. I have a couple of updates from ADE. First and foremost, we are pleased to announce that during the 26-27 school year, all Arizona schools will have access to the NAVI assessment suite, and that's grades K through 12. That is free of charge, and that will also include our benchmarks, aka progress checks, for grades 3 through 8. And those will also be available to all schools this year and not just our schools that are in school improvement. Couple of training dates to share with you in regards to NAVI. Pay attention to the week of July 14th. So it looks like the 14th, 15th, 16th, and then also July 20th and 21st. Those will be professional development training for instructional coaches, teachers, principals, and district leaders and or assessment coordinators to learn more about NAVI. I am also pleased to let you know that registration is now open for the Arizona 2026 Elementary and Secondary Education Act Conference, so the ASA conference. That will be held June 9th through the 12th over here in the West Valley at the Renaissance Phoenix Glendale Hotel, right over by Westgate. There is a new lower price, I am told. For just $425, you can join us at the conference. And lots of new information also being presented at the conference. So new data, registration, reporting, hands-on grant writing workshops, some McKinney-Vento training hours. They're accepting proposals and also session speakers in the field. So if you are interested in presenting, we ask that you complete a proposal. And then finally, really, this one is from Grants Management. This is a reminder for our fiscal grants management positions within the districts as well as the business office. Please make sure that you are continuing to regularly draw down those grant funds. We're asking that you do not wait until the end of the grant period, but please make sure that you are drawing those funds down so that they are being used this year with the students that are currently sitting in your seats. So those are all of the updates I have, and I'll just ask, are there any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha. Okay. Next up, for an AIA update, we'll have David Verdugo, who's here, who is our AIA liaison.
Good morning. This is my second year being the liaison, and in that time, we've had to hire a new executive director, so that was an interesting thing to do. But one of the things that we asked of that new executive director, Dr. Jim Dean, was to be more accessible and actually increase communication within our teams and districts. And so Jim did an initiative called Blitz 282, where he visited, or his team visited, every single school in the state. They completed that in March, which was a big lift for them. And he realized that it was probably something he should have thought second about. But so in the future, what they're going to do is probably visit half the state each year. But one of the things that he did during those visits, or the team did during those visits, they learned a lot about what's happening across the state, especially the rural areas. And so they wanted to make sure that they heard the stories, shared the positive stories, and also the concerns. So with that, that's the other thing that I wanted to mention as the AIA liaison. If there's any issues or concerns with the AIA, please do not hesitate to bring them to me. I'm happy to take them to the association to hopefully improve some of that communication that we need to continue to do. Some of the other things that are happening with spring championships are happening underway with golf, boys volleyball, track, field, softball, baseball, and those will be completed by May 19th. Also looking ahead, one of the things that the AIA is really focused on is trying to make sure, knowing that school budgets are becoming tighter, how can they leverage some outside revenue sources, renegotiating some contracts. And so that's one of the things that they'll be looking at. Also looking ahead, I know Rebecca is next with a legislative update. There were 6 states that legislatively tried to take over athletic associations across the country. So trying to get ahead of that, because some of those states, Arizona likes to follow. So what we are trying to do with AI is get ahead of why they were trying to take over those associations, and it's related to the transfer rule. So the AI will be looking at the transfer rule, trying to see how can we get ahead of that, mitigate some of that ahead of time. And so there may be some changes coming, but that will be for next year. So with that, any questions that I can answer about the AIA? Yes. Yes, yeah, definitely. Obviously, I'm in a rural district as well, and our closest competition, 45 minutes away. So. Yeah. Yeah. I will bring that to them and let Dr. Dean know, because I think, and again, trying to help rural schools, I think, has been one of the big things that we've asked Jim to do, because I know that there are obviously a lot of schools in the urban areas, but there is a lot of rural schools that need assistance. So I will bring that to him. So, all right, thank you. Anything else? All right. Oh, yes, sir.
When you talk about the other 6 states and the transfer rule, so I assume, does that mean you're looking at doing away with the transfer penalty?
Not necessarily doing away with it, but trying to, because in those states, one of the big things that they asked for was just one free transfer. Because as far as open enrollment goes, that initial, you can go anywhere you want in Arizona. But then that second, if you make a decision that you want to transfer a school, part of the issue was in these states that they wanted one free transfer. And then the second one, they didn't have an issue with of having some type of penalty, but it was that initial one free transfer. And so that's what they're going to be exploring. It would still need to go to the and be approved for probably not this next fiscal year, but the year after. But again, it's something that they want to just get ahead of. Any other? Yes.
My transportation supervisor is the chair of that transportation adventure. They're in the middle of that right now, so if you want to go through us, that'd probably be the best way.
Okay.
Send a letter from ASA and I can get you hooked up.
Perfect.
Rebecca.
I was gonna say, Nick, it's Nick, right?
Nick Franklin.
Yeah, Nick
Okay.
Franklin.
All right. Perfect.
And I think it's close to actually coming together. I think it's 92%, so now would be the
Time to jump in. All right.
Actually, your support might be critical.
Okay.
To push it over the line.
Perfect. I will let Jim know ASAP. All right. Thank you.
All right. Well, next up on our agenda to talk about legislative issues. Believe it or not, we have legislative issues in public education. I don't know, Rebecca, is 50 minutes enough to cover all of our issues that you have? If not, well, Mark is not here, but Rebecca is here with us, so we'll turn it over to her to talk about where we are.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. I'm just waiting for my slides, that's all. I can't talk without slides. Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see everybody in person, and for everybody watching. I've met more people the last 4 months, ASA members, and so a lot of them say that they see me online, so it's hello to everyone online. And it's always exciting when I meet you in person, so if you're online and you're going to be around at one of our conferences this summer, say hi. But I guess I have some time to do this update. I was worried I wouldn't be able to get through everything, but now we have some time. So where are we? So obviously it's April, so for some context, if you remember, the legislative session always starts the second Monday in January. All the committee hearings are over, so that's nice. We have, I kind of got a little bit of my life back, so I'm not stuck at the legislature too. But the legislature is now spending its time having caucus meetings and floor votes. They only worked Monday and Tuesday this week, and then they adjourned for the rest of the week because they're running out of things to do. And when they run out of things to do, they start fighting with each other. So it was better that they just went home for the rest of the week instead of sticking around. So we're waiting around for a budget agreement, essentially. So budget discussions should be happening right now. They're kind of happening to not a lot of substantive discussion going on with the governor and the legislature, though. And just for a reminder, the state fiscal year starts on July 1, and the one job the legislature actually has is to pass a balanced budget by July 1. So I thought it'd be good to review some stuff, like what the governor's budget recommendation was. So every January, whoever the governor is, they release a budget recommendation to the legislature. So I just wanted to cover what her Prop 123 recommendation was. So you heard Aaron Wonders talk about this. He said without some kind of Prop 123 continuation, it'll be hard to get new money to schools. So Prop 123 is expired. It drives me crazy that we call it Prop 123 because really what we're talking about is the land trust. Prop 123 was the settlement for the inflation funding lawsuit. So now when they talk about Prop 123, what they're really talking about is the land trust. So Governor Hobbs's budget recommendation was to create a ballot referral, so to have the legislature send to the ballot a proposition to renew Prop 123, which meant to restore the 6.9% distribution from land trust. So currently it's back down to 2.5. So her proposition would raise it to 6.9 and use that to pay for some building renewal grants and for an increase to the base. So her budget with that would have provided $271.3 million additional dollars to the base level, and then roughly $1.5 billion for school facilities over 3 years. So $500 million for BRG 3 years. And this was kind of seen as the deficiencies correction part of a potential settlement. She has not discussed a settlement to the lawsuit, but this idea came from the plaintiffs to use the trust in some way for building renewal grant funds. Budget reality is a little different now, 4 months later. So you kind of heard Aaron talk about the revenues changing. So JLBC is the Joint Legislative Budget Committee. It's made up of economists and staff who essentially run the state budget. They tell the legislature how much revenues they're bringing in, how much money they're actually spending. And at one of their quarterly financial advisory committee meetings just last week, they updated the revenue numbers, so now we have one-time cash. So the cash we have to spend is $378 million. That's not a lot of money. In the budget, you have ongoing budget items. Those are things that are baked into the budget, into the baseline that continue every year without needing legislative action and or without needing a budget change. And unfortunately, K-12 has 3 big things that are not in the baseline, that are not ongoing funding. And so now the legislature, JLBC, has started referring to these things as ongoing one-time, because ongoing built into the budget. We have to do them every year because schools, they're essentially ongoing expenses for schools. The reason why they're not ongoing and why they're one-time is because the state didn't know if we could afford it year to year. So of that $378 million, that's the cash available to spend on one-time items. So one-time in K-12 is $183 million to building renewal grants. That's what they've done the last several years. There is $17 million in the base is ongoing. So that brings the total for these last few years to BRG to $200 million. Then unfortunately, $37 million of the total $100 million for the Group B opportunity weight. And then $23 million of the additional assistance is also one time. So you can see that eats into that $378 million pretty quickly. And just a reminder, I like to remind everyone that ESA growth for FY26, which is our current fiscal year, it was $59.8 million above what we budgeted because of increased ESA enrollees. And there was only a $12.6 million decline in public school enrollment. So that shows that there is a deficit and a need for $47.2 million for FY26. So the legislature's own budget office is showing them how empowerment scholarship accounts do not save the general fund money. They actually cost the general fund money. So they'll need a supplemental appropriation for this fiscal year. And then I covered this several months ago, I think at our last meeting, but I thought it'd be good to bring back in front of us. Aaron alluded to some of this too. He talked about revenues are down because of the Iran conflict, but also as we look at that pile of cash we have to account for changes from the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, or HR 1, signed by President Trump last summer, has numerous provisions that will impact our budget and our state general fund. So tax conformity, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act had a lot of tax changes, and the state can choose how much they conform to that, and full conformity would cost us $440 million in FY27, and then about $300 million or so for the following years. The HR 1 also for the first time included work requirements for everyone on Medicaid. So Access has requested $19 million for more staff for administration of the requirements and for implementing the biannual determination of eligibility instead of just the annual once a year. And then there were changes to the SNAP program. So state administration of SNAP is currently, we pay for 50% of the, and HR 1 makes the states pay for 75. So the department has asked for $33 million for that. And then the SNAP error rate. So the HR 1 says that states have to pay a penalty if their error rate for SNAP enrollment is higher than 6%. And so DES has requested $26 million for staff to lower the error rate. It's actually based on FY25, the error rate. So there's already 1 year where we can't anything about it. And so JLBC is telling the legislature to be prepared to pay a penalty in FY28. So that's 2 fiscal years out. You may have heard in the news or maybe seen in your community that people are losing their SNAP benefits. I think it's over 100,000 kids now. That is because of the department. The department is making changes to the SNAP program to try and lower their error rate. And it has been a less than perfect rollout of those changes. So I've been trying to get some more information from the executive on what their plan is. It will impact some of the kids you serve. It'll impact direct certification for meals. But right now, the indication from the 9th floor that I got is that the department is hyper-focused on lowering the SNAP error rate. So they actually lowered eligibility for the program from 180% poverty line to 100%. We have this thing in Arizona called categorical eligibility, where if a family is eligible for TANF, which is cash assistance, that is at 180% of the poverty level. In Arizona, we say if you're eligible for TANF, you're eligible for SNAP. SNAP is technically 130%. The department decided to get rid of that. So anybody that's from that 130 to 180 that's eligible for TANF, we used to say you can have SNAP too. We've taken that away. So that's where a lot of, if you've seen your families or students lose benefits, it's probably that they're in that 130 to 180% of the income range. Budget impasse, you also heard Erin talk about this. On March 20th, Governor Hobbs announced that she was walking away from the negotiation and said Republicans need to publicly release their budget plan. And she did specifically say she wants to see something from them on Prop 123. And then a couple weeks later, on April 13th, she announced that she will veto all bills that come to her desk over this budget impasse, and that she will wait until Republicans introduce a public budget plan before she resumes business as usual. So work has, really slowed down because they don't want to send bills up to get vetoed. And so then I thought, since I had some time, that I would review this opportunity funding one, because even I get confused every year when it comes to the budget. I'm trying to remember exactly what it is we're asking for and why. So in the FY23 budget, which was 2020 session, the last session of Governor the FRPL Group B weight was created and $50 million ongoing was appropriated, so that's in the baseline budget. And then there were ongoing increases that would bring the weight total to $100 million ongoing over 3 years. So 2022 was the year they passed universal vouchers, and a couple Republicans said they would only vote for the vouchers if we also created this opportunity weight. So the next fiscal year in FY24, $13 million was added ongoing. So the total right now for ongoing in the budget is $3 million. And then unfortunately in FY25, the last appropriation, instead of being ongoing, was a one-time appropriation. So in FY25 and last year, which was FY26, we had to go to the Capitol to advocate for a one-time appropriation of $7 million to keep us whole at the $100 million. So we have to do this again this session. And it's the same situation with some ongoing DAA increases from that budget. So $23 million of the statewide appropriation to DAA is one time and not ongoing. And they did that because they can't afford them. They don't know if they can afford them every year. And so unfortunately, as what is common, education was put on the chopping block. So if we don't see the $37 million, so I'll go to this slide. So ASA budget priorities for FY27, now that we're in like the real budget negotiation portion of session, is to avoid cuts. We need to, of course, increase the base level and the transportation reimbursement rates for inflation, or 2%. Unfortunately, according to statute, it's whichever is lower. They obviously would need to do that for us to avoid a cut and for us to not oppose the budget. And that was what the Prop 123 was for several years during the recession. They didn't increase this for inflation, or 2%. So now, because of Prop 123, they have to. And then again, like I said, we need to continue the ongoing one time of $32 million, $23 million to DAA, and $37 million to the Group B FRPL Poverty Opportunity Weight. I put every name in there because we call it these three different things, and some people get this confused with the money for covering the reduced price lunch copay. This is different. This is M&O money. This is money in the funding formula that goes to your district for M&O. So sometimes you hear it called the poverty weight. We like to call it the opportunity weight to make it sound positive. Sometimes you'll hear it called the FRPL weight. I think it's referred to in statute as FRPL. And then, of course, we want them to fully fund the new school construction projects that have already been approved at the December meeting by the SFOB, and then fund building renewal grants at least $200. So on to bills. So just a reminder that these bills are dead. I've been talking about these since last summer, I think. The first one would have sped up the time for when teachers have to get the literacy endorsement on their certificate and would have required districts to pay for it. The second one would have strengthened third grade reading retention without putting additional resources into classrooms. And the third one would have allowed districts to use their dead cash on their K-3 reading plan, which has been pretty inequitable. These didn't even get hearings in the House Education Committee because they didn't even have the votes to get out of committee. These bills are dead too. I think there were more than these that this sponsor introduced, but these are the ones that got out of the House and did not move in the Senate. And so even though the rhetoric is really anti-superintendent, the fact that these didn't even get a hearing in the Senate shows that that's not truly how people actually feel. And thanks to many of our superintendents, especially in those in rural areas, these did not move in the Senate. And then Aaron talked about the vetoes on K-12 bills. I won't go through all of these, but I'll highlight just a couple. 2075, we opposed. This would have required districts post their contract online, but it also would have required that you submit them to ADE and then required ADE to create a report about superintendent compensation packages. So the sponsor and Representative Gress's criticism went beyond just salary. It went into the whole compensation packages, stuff about car allowances, stuff like that. We opposed this bill and said we would switch our position to support if they included the charter schools. And obviously they didn't, but the governor vetoed this. And I'll just say that that argument actually works really well. People respond, and Republicans and conservatives actually respond really positively to that argument. It almost gives them an out sometimes. And by telling them, you know, we can't support a bill or please oppose a bill that only puts a mandate on districts and not charters. So even though it can seem scary to go tell a legislator that, I wouldn't be afraid of it. Everybody, except for maybe the sponsor and Representative Gress, everybody else seems to respond kind of positively to that. The other one I'll highlight is 1142, Federal Tax Credit Authorization Scholarships, BOLIC. This would have required the state to opt into the federal tax credit for school scholarships that was created in H.R. 1. ASA is opposing or did oppose 1142 and told the governor's office we didn't support opting into the program at this time because it's still unclear to us how this tax credit can benefit public schools. So the federal law allows a federal income tax credit dollar for dollar, I think up to $1,700 for an individual to donate to what they call a scholarship granting organization, which is a nonprofit that can then grant scholarships to students for tuition or cover Dell expenses. The rules from the Treasury we expect to come out this summer, and then once we have those rules, a better understanding of how and if districts can benefit from this. Oh, sorry, I guess I made a slide on it, I forgot. But that was vetoed by the governor's office. HB 20, I'm just going to cover a couple that have been signed, nothing too exciting. HB 2395, fitness program establishes the Arizona School Fitness Program and ADE, so schools can elect to participate in the National Presidential Fitness Test, which was reinstated by the president in 2025. I remember doing this when I was in high school. Schools can elect to participate in the program and include the designation on their report card, and this was signed by the 2032 statewide assessment testing windows. This is likely to be signed by the governor. We actually really like this bill. I put this in front of lots of superintendents across the state and got really positive feedback. This changes the 3/8 statewide assessment testing window established by ADE. So ADE currently establishes a testing window of 4 weeks for the assessment. And this bill says that now that testing window needs to be 6 weeks and that it cannot begin before the second week of April. And then thanks to feedback from our superintendents, the high school assessment stays status quo, so the department does status quo with how they do that. We got feedback from you guys that it works well for the high school students to take the ACT in April, and then many of them are taking CTE courses or AP tests in May. And so we do expect this to get signed, so I'd say if you're making your plans for next year, just factor this into your plans. And the sponsor really thought it would be great to move the testing window to later in the school year. And the feedback we got from you guys was that that makes sense. And it makes sense to students and teachers and parents. 24-23 advanced math. This came from the Excel and Ed Foundation. We opposed this and sought an amendment. We'd rather this didn't go, but we had to agree to an amendment. It requires districts and charters to automatically enroll 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students in if available. So if you don't have one at your district, you're not required to do this. If the student's parent doesn't object and the student scores highly proficient on the statewide assessment or scores highly proficient on a benchmark assessment aligned to the statewide assessment, I know that language is, but the sponsor was adamant that the benchmark testing piece had to stay in there. So this is likely to be signed by the governor. 4043 training AED CPR from Winninger in the Chandler area. So beginning next year, August 1st, 2027, each district and charter school must ensure at least one employee at each school campus has successfully completed CPR and first aid training. And if the campus has an automated external defibrillator, one employee at that campus must be trained in using the AED. So we supported this because there were two other really burdensome mandates going through from the Heart Association that would have been way more difficult than this. Mr. Winninger and Mitzi Epstein worked together on this. There was a student in a school in their district who choked in class and died. And so this is important to them, and we were happy to support this as opposed to the other mandates. So this is likely to be signed by the governor, and most of your schools are probably compliant with this. 1763, this is a bill coming from a superintendent and a district that they brought to Senator Dunn. This requires the Office of the Auditor General to release financial report forms on or before August 15th. So current law requires the AFRs to be completed and submitted to the ADE by October 15th. So this will ensure that those forms are released in a timely manner and give your business staff, or you, it might be you filling out the forms, a couple months to complete those before they're due. And this is likely to be signed by Governor Hobbs. 1798 FAFSA financial aid awareness. This started out as a huge mandate that ABOR was supporting, and I talked to them afterwards about how we hopefully can move forward together, superintendents and ABOR not supporting mandates on each other. That's typically what we try to do, but we worked with the charter schools to amend this bill to be what you see in front of you, so it's no longer a mandate. It establishes a FAFSA awareness program and ADE administered by both ADE and ABOR. And beginning in the 27-28 school year, a school may elect to participate in the program. To be eligible, you have to designate one employee who will serve as the point of contact for FAFSA with the department and with ABOR, and who will provide information to students and their families on FAFSA. And it includes some reporting requirements and other programmatic requirements for eligibility. And if a district meets all the requirements, they can include the financial aid awareness designation on their school card. I think this will get signed by the governor if it keeps moving. And then the last bill I wanted to cover is one that I think a lot of you are familiar with, especially the superintendents, because I sent out quite a bit of communication on this. These bills are both sitting in the House. They're very, very important to the sponsors. SCR 1032, instructional expenses, operational spending, enforcement. This is from Senator Jake Hoffman. It requires districts spend 60% of their operational spending on instructional spending as defined by the Auditor General. One Monday morning, Mark and I went to the Capitol, and this passed out of the Senate with an amendment because they came to some agreement over the weekend. So that's why I say bills are never really dead. Bills can always move, especially when they're further along in the process. So the amendment added on the Senate floor, I cover this every time I talk to any school people, so you understand. Some people are saying it excludes rural schools, but not quite. So the Senate amendment, so the Senate bill now excludes some rural districts. It applies to all districts over 7,500 students. So I just point out this includes Yuma Union and Flagstaff Unified, which are both considered rural. And then it also applies to all school districts in counties with more than 500,000 people. And we know there are rural districts in both Maricopa and Pima County, the two counties that would apply. So that's why I say one Monday we showed up at work and boom, this bill went out with this amendment, and there was to stop it, even as we were trying to point out to folks that it didn't exempt to rural schools and many more. So that bill is sitting in the House. HCR 2007, reporting teacher salary increases schools. This is Representative Matt Gress's bill. It's very important to Matt Gress. He's still trying to get this bill moving. Also, when you have these bills are not identical, but if you can make a Senate and a House bill identical and swap them on the floor, and vote it out. So there's a couple mechanisms in which they could vote either of these out pretty quickly. So that requires districts spend 50% on their teacher pay and 60% on their instructional spending. So it's just a little bit different than the Senate. So the Auditor General currently defines these terms and uses them for the annual classroom spending report. So if you, the dollars in the classroom uses these definitions. They combine instructional spending, student support, and instruction support, but the bill just references instructional spending. So that includes teachers, teachers' aides, substitute teachers, graders, lecturers. This is the OAG website. General instruction supplies, instructional aids, field trips, athletics, co-curricular activities, and case. So more importantly, what does that not include? It doesn't include all of these categories. So your student support services, you know what these are, your counselors, your speech therapists, your nurses, social workers, attendance clerks, all of your instructional support. So your librarians, your coaches, your teacher trainers, your literacy coaches that the legislature wants you to hire so bad would be considered outside this, curriculum development, SPED directors, IT, et cetera, administration, superintendents, principals, business managers, clerical, HR, payroll, all of that, your plant operations, your food services, and your transportation. So when talking to legislators, a lot of superintendents have on what would they have to cut from their district and here in these categories to be compliant with the 60% here. That may be your transportation services for all your non-special ed kids. It could be your counselors or your librarians or your literacy coaches. So these bills are really problematic. They don't have the bills to pass, the votes to pass right now, but I would just say the sponsors are still very interested in getting these bills out. The governor can't veto ballot referrals, so that's why they're doing these as ballot referrals to try and bypass a veto. And then what's next? Sorry, I'm almost done. Am I going too long, Paul? Wait, okay. So what's next? So budget drama and budget discussions, voting out the rest of the bills, more vetoes, hopefully lots of vetoes. There's still some bad bills out there. I'll give a more detailed update in the superintendent division and cover some of the bills, the bad ones. There's going to be a lot of discussion on the A through F accountability system and proficiency. There's been a lot of JLAC hearings, Joint Legislative Audit Committee hearings. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a JLAC hearing about A to F where the chairs dive more into what the A to F formula is. Right now, their rhetoric is that we have way too many A schools for how low our proficiency scores are. So I wanted to say this, so everyone online, I was going to say this in the superintendent's meeting, but I just want everyone to hear this. Joint Legislative Audit Committee, it's a joint committee made up of Senate members and House members, and they direct the work of the Auditor General. And the chair is trying to host monthly meetings, which is unusual. So we expect these to pick back up in frequency and intensity over the interim. So if you get a letter from JLAC, it's kind of scary. You just get this letter that says you're called down to appear in front of JLAC. The JLAC hearing in March, I think districts had like 6 days to prepare for. So if you get a letter from JLAC, please let me know. Please reach out to Paul or I. And we can help you through the process of navigating that. It's not easy, but it's just one day that you have to get through. But I know if there's superintendents watching who've had to go through this, it's not a fun time. But just let us know and we can help you with that. So if there's time, I'm happy to answer any questions.
So if any one of those referendums make it to the ballot at all, and they for some reason pass, could the following year we get somebody who's sponsored to redefine what counts as classroom spending? Because quite honestly, if you could, special education services and transportation, a lot of us would be able to meet that threshold pretty easily. I'm not hard on transportation until June 30th when you all kick me out of here because I'm retired. But I'll pass it on to Dr. But anyway, I guess that would be that.
So the question was, if the ballot referrals pass on the 60% instructional spending, could somebody come back the next year and write a bill to define what instructional spending is to try and include more things, maybe like transportation? So when something passes at the ballot, it's voter protected, which means the legislature can't change it. They can change it with the 2/3 vote if it furthers the intent of the initiative. So they could Possibly you could get a legislator to introduce a bill to define classroom spending to be more inclusive. It would need to pass with a 2/3 vote, and the attorneys at the legislature have to sign off on it as furthering the intent.
My understanding that the definition of classroom spending is separate from this. No, they define classroom spending.
So she asked if the definition of classroom spending was separate than this. So state law says that the Auditor General has to create a report showing what districts spend in the classroom. Classroom spending is not defined in statute. The Auditor General determines all of that. Paul, when he was superintendent division president, we met with her. It was a different Auditor General at the time because they were only counting instructional spending as classroom spending. Now they do, if you look at the pie charts, they put instructional, student support, and instruction support together as classroom spending. That's all at the discretion of the Auditor General. And back when we first approached her, we were trying to get her to change the definition altogether, but she was very adamant that she needs it to match federal definitions. I'm not sure if that's I don't know that that's entirely true, what they were saying at the time. But so the bill, so the classroom spending report gives all the discretion to the Auditor General on the definition. And then this bill does the same thing. So we're assuming she would use the same definitions. The work would be at the Auditor General's office, yeah. Hopefully that made sense. Curtis.
Any news or updates or proposal getting traction, and or will it have impact?
So the question was about any insider baseball on the voucher initiative. I don't have any insider baseball on that. I only know what you guys know, what we see. You know, they're collecting signatures to get that on the ballot. There's 2 competing initiatives. There's the one backed by SOSAZ, and then there's the one backed by American Federation for Children, which is showing a lot of voucher supporters don't even like that one. The 60% in the classroom bills, we've been told, are moving as a response to that. There's also a bill that Gress is moving related to teacher strikes that is, we've been told, has been introduced as a response to that. I'm not sure how it impacts budget negotiations. They're not happy about it. The voucher supporting legislators are not really happy about either initiative.
Do you think you said there's 2 responses. Do you think they'll include some of the variables in their budget negotiations to let the air out of the balloon for vouchers?
So the question was, do you think they'll include some of the variables, like from the initiatives in the budget, to let the air out? I think they're being advised to do that by some consultants. Some of the stuff like the prohibition on luxury items and stuff like that, they're being advised to include that because most Arizonans support that and that they think that would take some of the wind out. But vouchers is even really divisive at the Capitol. Part of why 123 struggles to move every year is that we have voucher supporting legislators that want to include a constitutional protection for vouchers, and they would never agree to kind of what you're talking about. So, but I don't have a crystal ball. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen. And then on the transportation thing, the thing that you're talking about to AIA is the hours of service rule. We got Nick appointed to so you're talking about the Student Transportation Advisory Council. If you remember, like a year and a half ago, I was talking about this at every meeting. We were just trying to get it appointed and going. So that was our first one. We got Nick on there. I tried to get my dad on there, but they didn't put him on there. No surprise. He's a bus driver in Higley. But the hours of service rule is where the department a couple years ago started saying that you have to count every hour that your driver is working towards their drive time hours, whether they're sitting there on the side of the field at the football game or whatever. And so we're lucky to have Nick and other transportation directors who are really smart on this, working on this issue. This was brought to me 3 years ago by my dad, who's a bus driver and was running into this issue. He actually works in an urban district, but they're big and they have so many field trips. So it's really bad for rurals, but it's really bad for the urban high school too, as Curtis knows, because of all the extracurriculars you have and the football games and the choir concerts. And so DPS just came out with the rules for the 11 to 15 passenger vehicles. We're doing a webinar with Guppy Mac and the Trust in a week on that. And then the next set of rules that's coming out are the hours of service rules. So we're hopeful with Governor Hobbs in the office and the stack appointed with good people that those rules will come out in our favor, right? Because when your driver is taking kids from Phoenix to Flagstaff, they're on the road for 3 hours, and then they're not driving and exhausting themselves for the 6 hours they're there, right? They're sitting around waiting to drive those kids back. So we don't believe those hours should be counted against their drive time. And bringing another driver with you wouldn't solve the issue because they would count those hours towards both of their drive times. So I never thought of involving the AIA. That's really smart. So I'll make sure to work with you guys on public comments on that. And so happy to answer any other questions. Jeff.
Let's say something does make it onto the ballot, one of these HCRs, classroom spending, for example. What's the strategy at that point to oppose, to fund an opposition, something gets onto the ballot?
Yeah, so Jeff Sprout asked, what's the plan? Is there a plan if one of those ballot initiatives about 6% instruction spending gets on the ballot? So there's a state, even though we're a nonprofit C3, there's a state law in Arizona saying that since we take money from school districts, we cannot take positions on ballot initiatives. So if it gets to the ballot, there's nothing ASA can do. But there would hopefully be other groups that would come out with an organized opposition. When talking to Democratic lawmakers, we've tried to talk about how bad this would be for teachers. They would lose all of their supports, their APs, their instructional coaches, all the people outside of instructional spending. So hopefully it would be something that AEA, who has a C4, could help with. But that's why it's important to keep talking about it. I know we had a superintendent and some parents go down to the legislature just this week to talk about this bill. And it was a good one for parents to talk about and for other people in your district to talk about, because you can talk about all these things in the other categories that you might lose. So I think we just have to keep coming at it from that perspective. Like, you're going to lose all the librarians in every district we're going to let go, and all the academic council, stuff like that is what gets people thinking about this. But as far as an organized plan to opposing it, we don't have one. Any other questions? On that happy note, I can end. Thank you.
Keep up the great work, Rebecca. So we are ahead of schedule, which is great. So I just want to give you guys a little update. If you remember back in January, we had Matthew Holm from Bespoke do a quick demonstration of a data dashboard, and then he spent a little more time with the superintendent's division. But that was kind of a feeler to see what the reaction was, and we had a lot of positive feedback. So we've engaged with them to build a very robust data dashboard and make it accessible to all ASA members. So in short, if you were to engage with anyone to get that kind of data and to build a data dashboard where it's very interactive, you would each spend a lot of money. And so looking at it kind of pragmatically, goose grief, Friday morning, it would be much more cost effective to have one statewide dashboard. So we've engaged with them to build that, and it's nearly finished. So we expect probably the week of May 11th, we'll be able to launch it with a training, and you'll each have access to it. So they're still adding to it and doing beta testing, but it's very robust, and I'm really excited about that because I know the feedback from you was very positive, and people want more. And so I want you to know we're working on it, and probably by sometime next week, we'll be able to firm up the date and time for the training launch. But just what I've seen so far, I mean, you'll be able to look at school level to see where your kids are coming from, where they're going to, within your district. We've also added enhancements where it'll aggregate to the county level, because a lot of our county superintendents have interest in that, and also looking that way. There's some correlation with zip codes, and it's almost too robust. Like, you really have to play with it to understand all of its features. Another piece that we've just added, because I know, like, proficiency, that bad P word, there is the ability to see where kids are going in terms of both proficiency and growth of the schools they're going to or coming from, as well as the letter grades. So it really is robust, and we're kind of a pilot state for them to work with on this. And the guys have Arizona roots. They're very, very smart. Like, I'm just really impressed with what they're able to do. So I'm really excited that we're going to be able to very soon. So you'll hear more in the very near future, but I wanted to at least give you a little feedback on the follow-up from that, and I'm really excited we're going to be able to do this. Yeah, Curtis.
Just remember to remind them that not all districts are zip code bound. So it's really important that the tool stays in Deer Valley, not the 5 zip codes that impact you.
Yeah, so Curtis made a good point that zip codes don't align with district boundaries, and so they're well aware of that, and they don't align with municipal boundaries, county boundaries. I mean, you all know that. So that's definitely built into it. One of the things you'll be able to do, something that we kind of suggest, is you'll also be able to adjust a radius around your district. And so there's just a lot of different ways. So zip codes is just one piece of it. One of the problems, though, is sometimes people like to look at, zip codes. We have socioeconomic levels associated with zip codes, and so you can start to see some of the patterns. So that's one of the reasons to build it in. Funny little story, the data is hard to get to, right? You know that. And even some of the data that is released might be released in a PDF, so they have to extract it to get it in a digital form to be able to put it in a data file and do all this stuff. But I'm trying to remember what my point was. Good grief. Oh, I know what it was. So when we're negotiating, because it's been a couple months now, when we were negotiating on it, one of the data points was immunization records. And so we're kind of picking and choosing, because the more the scope, the more expense, right? And so, we're investing to build this, and then we're investing to own it or rent it and keep it updated. So anyway, I'm like, we really, it's important to get immunizations. We know we have to report it, but we can keep that out. We don't really need it. And they're like, wait a minute, you don't understand. Private schools have to report that, and the only way they can track the kids is through immunization reports. So I'm like, oh, we want immunizations included. So there's so much. The zip code is just one little piece. Immunization records are another piece, but that's just how robust it is, because really there's not a lot to be able to track ESA voucher kids. And we have it. I've seen it, and they're just doing some testing. I've asked a couple of you to even do a little bit of a meeting with them, just to go through, so we can get from the district level, what else would you want to see? Is this how you want to see it at stage, as well as building documentation to help support it so you can figure it out. So anyway, excited to announce that, and give you a few extra minutes. Steve, unless you have something. If you want to come up here so people online can see it.
No, I just wanted to add, my leadership team and I have taken the chance to sit down with Matthew Home again, and it is amazing what it does. It certainly opens your eyes to see your capture rate. You can see, the nice thing, I think, you can also target the kids that are in your district and leaving your district. So if you wanted to market specifically those kids that are leaving, so it's amazing. And I know we're just getting going, but I would highly recommend, if you haven't, schedule a meeting with them and learn about it, because it is a fabulous tool, and I think it will be beneficial to all of us trying to maintain our kids.
Thanks, Steve. You don't need to schedule a meeting. I'd wait until after, I think May 11th is our tentative date. Firm that up next week. Yeah.
Paul, we were just talking about how this tool might also support districts finding their proportionate share for students that are going to private schools, right? It's oftentimes laborious for people to be reaching out to multiple schools to find out where are your private school students, and it is the onus of the district to do that. So I'm hopeful that that's
the tool does help, and some of Natasha's comments were about being able to track where your kids are going, including the private schools, and it's even broken down. Like, you want to know how many are going to Catholic schools? It's in there. If you want to know parochial, it's in there. So the other piece that's not included but will be an opportunity for you is if you want to partner with them to go deeper with your kids, you can give them your kid data file, and they can tell you which students they are. So right now, at a high level, they'll be able to show you how many kids, where they live, all these kind of things, but not name, student ID number, but you would have that opportunity, and it just goes beyond the scope of what we're doing with them, but you would actually be able to go even further and know who those kids are, in detail based on your student information data file. So cool stuff. Anyway, we have extra time, so you can chat a little bit as we transition into the division meetings at 10:15. And here are the locations. So thanks, everyone.